What was the Attic order? Why this architectural order wasn't achieved in other temples? What was the meiosis and the entasis? What was the purpose of the columns' flutes? What was the capital? What was the purpose of the distortions found in the architectural members of ancient Greek temples like the Parthenon? In this video, I will answer these questions and I will present to you the basic characteristics of the architecture of one of the most famous and important ancient Greek temples, the Parthenon. The Parthenon is a Doric peripteral temple that combines elements of the delicate Ionic order. To better understand and identify the architectural features of the Parthenon, I will divide the building into 4 zones. The first zone is the crypida or crepidoma, the second the colonnade, the third the entablature, and the fourth the roof. Zone 1, the crypida. The platform on which the building rested was called crypida or crepidoma and appeared to us as steps. It consisted of 3 layers. The upper one was called stylobat. The crypida sat on the ephenteria, which was the upper layer of the Parthenon stereobat. The ephenteria along with the foundation of the building was called stereobat. The stylobat. The Parthenon's stylobat had secrets not visible to the human eye. The term stylobat is a combination of the Greek word stylos, which means column, and veno, which means bearing. So stylobat in Greek means the barrier of the columns. Its dimensions obey a specific ratio, more on that in another video, while in the middle of each small side appeared a 6 cm peak and in the middle of each large side an 11 cm peak. Therefore, the surface of the stylobat wasn't flat but curvilinear. That was intended and not accidental. In fact, these distortions were designed to eliminate the illusion caused by a human eye when observing straight lines from afar. Let's see an example. Look at the illusion 1. How do the 2 purple lines act? Are they straight or do they bend? Because we are drawn to the edges of the rhombus, the lines appear to curve slightly. So if we draw them as curves, they will look straight and more stylish. Illusion 2. Example 2 applies not only to the stylobat of the Parthenon, but to the crypida and other architectural members of the temple. Zone 2, the colonnade. The columns of the temple were in Doric order. Every column presented unique features and innovations that lead to the stunning visual effect of the building and gave it its own life and a hidden harmony. The Doric column consisted of separate parts, called drums, which were not visible after completion as they were covered with a light plaster. Each column of the temple was made from Pentelic marble and was 10.43 meters high with an average diameter of 1.93 meters. The columns are comprised of 11 drums. Each drum weighed about 1.5 tons. So, the total weight of a column is estimated to have been 16.5 tons. As in all ancient Greek temples, the Parthenon's columns rested directly on the stylobat, while the upper part ended with the capital. The capital of the Doric order consisted of the echinos, the abacus, and the colorin. It was heavier and plainer compared with the capitals of the other orders of ancient Greek architecture. The main body of the column was striated with sharp edges, flutes. The purpose of these flutes was to allow for the vertical interplay of light and shadow on the columns, which had the effect of emphasizing the column's circular shape. Their number ranged from 16 to 20. Their depth could also vary from temple to temple. In Parthenon were deeper at the top of the columns. The shape of each of the Parthenon's columns had two unique characteristics, the meiosis and the entasis. Meiosis is the narrowing of the column from the bottom up. As a result, the diameter of the highest drum was smaller than that of the first one. This meiosis followed a specific curve. At 2/5 of the height of the column, about 3.47 meters, there was a swelling called entasis. The entasis was intended to give the observer the impression that the column was increasing its power to hold the structure's weight. The Parthenon, as a peripteral temple, had columns all around the cella. Usually, Doric temples had 6 columns for the narrow sides and 14 for the long ones. However, the Parthenon has 8 columns on the narrow sides and 17 columns on the long. The total number of columns surrounding the walls is 46. Of particular interest is the fact that the Parthenon's columns turn inward by 7 centimeters. An exception is the 4 corner columns, which also rotate inward, but diagonally by about 10 centimeters. As a result, the columns are not vertical and the temple does not form a rectangular parallelepiped but a pyramidal arrangement. This architectural technique along with the meiosis is intended to give the visitor a sense that the structure is taller. Zone 3: the entablature. The Parthenon's entablature consists of the architrave, the Doric frieze, and the cornice. The architrave is the section that rests directly on the colonnade and is typical without decorative elements. On the Doric frieze, there is a continuous alternation of triglyphs and metopes. The triglyphs are 3 vertical marble pieces. Their design was inspired by the timber beams used in older temples. For this reason, below each triglyph was an imitation of wooden nails, called drops. The drops represented what would have secured the wooden beams. The metopes, placed between the triglyphs, were marble pieces with relief representations. The triglyphs were painted blue, while the metopes were red. Zone 4: the roof. The last zone consists of the Parthenon's roof with the pediments and the pedimental sculptures. The pediments are the triangular spaces formed by the eaves of the roof at the narrow sides of the temple. They were decorated with larger-than-life-size statues. The Parthenon's pediments depicted mythological scenes that were associated with the history of Athens. More on that in another video. The background, enclosed by a pediment, was called tympanum and in Parthenon was probably red in color. The roof corners of the Parthenon ended in pseudospouts in the form of grand lion heads, about 1.2 tons each. The animal's head, with the wavy mane, the sharp teeth, and the colors adorning it was an integral, purely decorative element given that its open mouth lacked a spout for water drainage. Above the lion heads, decorative elements called acroterion were placed, while a huge sculpture in the form of a palmette was placed in the middle and at the top of each pediment. The Parthenon's roof was tiled. The weight of the tiles was borne by timber beams. These were the only elements of the temple that were not made from Pentelic marble. The Parthenon tiles followed the technique of the era, which used a pan tile and a cover tile, both of Pentelic marble. On the long sides of the roof, the edges of the tiles were finished with an antefix, a vertical piece of marble that conceals their edges. On the Parthenon, the antefixes were in the form of palmettes. Parthenon had 126 antefixes decorated with addersed spirals and 13-leaved palmettes. Finally, the phatonomata were decorative panels of the ceilings, and in the Parthenon were also marble, probably blue in color with a sun or a flower in the center. In this 360 degrees view, you are on the southeast corner of the Parthenon. Notice the ceilings, which are decorated with phatonomata. The Ionic frieze. The architectural feature that runs around the upper part of the outer wall of the cella was the Ionic frieze. It consisted of 115 blocks 1.2 meters high made all of Pentelic marble. The total length of the frieze was 160 meters. It was richly decorated with marble reliefs. Along with the Ionic columns of the opisthotomus are the two architectural features borrowed from the Ionic order. The combination of the two orders, Doric and Ionic, was inspired by Pericles in an attempt to give nationwide meaning to his ambitious project, since the financial resources, the artists, and craftsmen derived from almost every Greek city-state. The architectural details and innovations presented in this video are largely not visible and were aimed at ensuring the building's own life with a hidden harmony. So the Parthenon was a project of complex calculations, which proves how advanced mathematical science was, and how high the demands of the public were at that time. All the above, as well as the vitality that architects were achieved by using optical illusions and proportional dimensions, made the Parthenon a unique architectural edifice. It is no coincidence that according to several archaeologists and architects, such as Gottfried Gruben and Katerina Servi, the architecture of the temple essentially introduced a new order, the so-called Parthenon or Attic order, which was the mature and harmonic evolution of the Doric and Ionic orders. It was the first temple to achieve this without the exaggerations of previous centuries, but with mature contrasts in architecture, decoration, and sculpture. There were many possible reasons why this new order was not achieved in other temples, but some of them would certainly be the high cost of the erection and the beginning of the Peloponnesian War, which started almost with the grand opening of the Parthenon.